Welcome to Shoutout to the Exes, the podcast where we turn heartbreak into growth, pain into power, and every what if into a thank you. I'm Heather, and together we're diving into lessons that our past loves have left behind. Hi everyone, I am so excited to be here for the very first episode of Shoutout to the Exes. I figured the way to start is to really just tell my story because I'm going to be bringing guests on each week and you're probably thinking, what the heck does this girl know about relationships and why is she doing this? So I'm going to share my story that I've never shared to anyone before just because I always felt that being so young and going through what I went through at the age I went through, that going into the dating world again, it was very scary because it's divorce and it's not a topic you want to talk about. And it's not a topic that's a hot topic. And it's crazy that I'm even sharing this publicly that I got divorced because I'm not going to lie to you, when I go on dating apps and I go on dates, I don't tell people that. Like I pull the whole yeah, I was in a relationship for 8 years and whatever. And the question that always comes up probably around the second or third date is well, why didn't you get married? Why wasn't the next step taken? And as soon as I mention the word divorce, it's like an immediate shift in everything. And I notice the guys start to take a step back and they're like, oh my God, this girl's been married and divorced. She's damaged. She's this. She has emotional trauma. And no shit. We all have emotional trauma. That's life. Life is traumatizing and we all have a little bit of it. But I'm here to talk about this because finally talk about it after it's been now 4 years officially that I've left my husband. And, I'm ready to share my story, so we'll dive right into it. Also, my producer's here, Gus. If you hear him asking random questions, it's not a ghost in the room, it is him. So here we go. So it all started back in, 2013, yes, because that's when I went to college. And by the way, I'm not going to say anybody's name. We are going to refer to them as letters. And I met B my first week of college. I was 17 years old. I had graduated early from high school, so I was up there in January. First week, right off the bat, he comes up to me and he's like, teach me how to wobble. Yes, that's just kind of ages me a little bit, I guess. You know how old I am. But we do it. We hang out. My mind is, okay, I'm not really going to be in a relationship. I just started college. He's going to be that guy. And he was literally labeled in my phone as that guy, where I just hang out with him. We have fun. Fast forward, we find out we live in the same apartment complex, which obviously escalates things further, and we start dating. I find out that he's a senior. I'm a freshman, so I was turning 18 that week, luckily, because he was 22, so everything was good to go. And I did not know he was going to medical school probably until the third month of us being in a relationship, so that's a very important note from the story. So anyway, we go through his last semester, my first semester of college, and I'm thinking he's leaving for medical school. That's going to be it. We're going to have fun, and he's going to go. He ends up leaving. We decide to stay together, and he had told me if I made it through 2 years of medical school, he would put a ring on my finger. And I want to talk about that particular moment because I think that's where the manipulation started, and I didn't even realize that it was starting there because as a young 17-year-old, newly 18, you're going into college, you're not grown, you don't know stuff. You pretend like you do and you tell your parents you're an adult and you don't need their help, but it was just okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be with him for 2 years and I'm going to get that ring on my finger and I'm going to prove everybody. And met his family. They seemed to like me. Everything seemed to be going well. And then 2 years passed. I'm realizing that I'm giving up a lot of my college experience to go see him where he's at medical school. I'm spending weekends there, probably seeing each other twice a month, I would say, because I'm flying up there, and then spending summers there. The day after he finishes step 1 of boards, he does ask me to marry him. So I'm like, okay, like he followed through. Now, I want to also point out, this is what narcissists and manipulators do. They do make promises to you, and if you follow through, they're going to follow through too, because they want to see how far that they can push you. So I'm thinking to myself, he made this promise. He put a ring on my finger. Great. I'm 19 years old. I'm engaged. I'm in college. I'm like, oh my God, all of my friends are excited for me. My family is excited. His family seems to be excited, but we'll get there. So, and I had always said I wanted a long engagement because I was adamant about having my last name on my degree. I did not want anybody else's last name but mine because I was one of the first to graduate in our family. So that was me and my brother. So that was very important to me. We ended up setting the date. So that was in 2014, 2015, we get engaged. We set the date to get married in 2017 of April 2017, sorry. And I graduate from college. Everything seems to be going well. He's in his third year, going into his fourth year. We decide that it's time for me to move to where he is. So I moved from Orlando, from school, down to Boynton Beach. He is going to be going through rotations his third year, Miami, Boynton, Tampa, all over Florida. And I decide to get a job at his high school where I coach his sister, so my future sister-in-law, and I also teach his other sister because they were twins. And so obviously I'm pretty intertwined at this point with the family, with the situation and everything. I was not the head coach, and this is important to note for the situation because my sister-in-law was on the JV team. I was the JV coach. I had already been called into the office for favoring her. Obviously, it's my future and sister-in-law. Like, I wasn't favoring her. I was driving her home from practice because she's my sister-in-law. Like, that's just what you do. Anyway, something ends up happening. She gets sick. She misses an assignment. She misses something that she's supposed to do for cheerleading. I'm told by the athletic director, you need to give her a demerit. So I'm like, okay, I have to do this. And that was like, I guess, the straw that broke the camel's back for my in-laws, because after that happened, it was like back-to-back shots at me about how I'm not good to the family, I'm a narcissist, I'm emotionally abusive, I'm all of these things. I'm not going to be a good mom, I'm not going to be a good wife, I'm not going to be good in anything. They should have stopped it from the beginning because I wasn't going to be a doctor, because God forbid anybody else has another job other than being a doctor or a lawyer, because in their eyes, that's the only job you can have and make money. But that was my life for 6 months leading up to him calling me the day after Christmas saying, hey, we can't get married anymore. And I knew something was sketchy because they had met with my parents on Christmas Eve. And my dad and my mom had to sit and listen to these two people bash me for 2.5 hours. And if you know my dad, so my friends who are listening, y'all know Rick Perry, all right? You know him. And you know that you talk about his daughter, like that's it. But he did. He respectfully sat there for 2.5 hours. And my parents know. They're like, my daughter's not perfect. She has her flaws, but they're young. They're going to grow together. Like, down to a point, like, I think my parents reminded me, they brought me, I like Kraft mac and cheese, sue me, whatever. Like, I'm a kid at heart. They bought me $1 box of mac and cheese, and they were mad that I didn't make the mac and cheese at their house. Like, this was the shit they were bringing up. And so, anyway, that all happens. Christmas Day, of course, they don't show up to our house. It's our first house warming, like, Christmas party, whatever. They don't show up the next day. He gets the call, like, hey, you need to come over. And I'm like, I don't think you should go. Like, something in my heart and my gut was like, something's not right. He goes, he calls me 2.5 hours later and says, hey, like, we can't get married. And I'm like, what do you mean we can't get married? We're supposed to be getting married in 4 months. This was December 2016. And everything was paid for. And, like, shout out to my parents. They're not poor, but they're not super rich. Like, they're fine. But they had put all this money out for my wedding, like other little girls getting married. Everything was paid for. And he goes, well, my family called every single family member and told them that they're not allowed to come to the wedding. And I said, I get it. Like, I couldn't get married like that either. Like, and I respected him in that moment where I was like, I understand that you can't get married with nobody there to support you. 100% get it. So he comes home and I'm like, but if you can't marry me, I'm going to leave. Because then there's no reason for me to be here. Like, what are we fighting for if that's not a thing? So I end up actually leaving for a week. He comes to my grandma's house. We have a great conversation. And he goes, I want to be with you. Like, you're the person I want to be with. And I was like, okay, well, then we're going to get married for me and you. We don't need a wedding. We don't need anything. Like, we're going to go to the courthouse. We're going to get married. We end up getting married on a beach. A couple of our friends, just very small. I think it was St. Patrick's weekend. We go out to like Atlantic Avenue and we're like the only one. I'm the only one in white and everybody else is in green. But like, I kind of also was nervous because he had not told his parents that we were getting married. They had no idea. My parents knew. His family had no idea. Mind you, I work at the school his sisters are at. So like I couldn't wear my ring to school. Like I couldn't do anything. It was basically like in hiding. So he tells his parents like a couple months later and they like lose their shit. And again, it's like the continuous hits at like who I am and my character. And I know I'm not perfect. I don't think anybody sits here and claims to be perfect. And I think we all learn lessons each and every day. But I know I'm a damn good spouse and like I'm a damn good partner because I did everything for this man. Like he said jump, I said how high. Like that's just who I am as a person. And that's like in my nature to be like that for people I care about. So it was like stupid things like, oh, if the kid gets sick when you guys have a kid, who's going to leave work to go pick up the kid? I don't freaking know. Like we'll figure it out when the time comes. Like those are questions you can't answer in that moment. So anyway, and I'm saying like they told him they would rather him be gay than be with me. Which, again, I have no problem with gay people, but, like, that was, like, their statement. They'd rather him be gay, that if he was to divorce me, they would pay off all of his medical school loans and buy him a Lamborghini, that he needs to go to rehab because he's an addict from, like, crazy shit. And, like, it gets to you after a certain point. And constantly being told, like, I'm not good enough. So this all happens. January 2018, we finally decide to have a wedding. So we had already been married for almost a year at this point, officially. But my parents still wanted to throw us a wedding. They put the money out. They were like, let's do it. I'm about to walk down the aisle, and I get told my in-laws are there. And that was the first time that I would be seeing them in almost 2 years. And I lose it. Like, I have a full-blown panic attack. I'm hysterically crying. In the video, you see me walking down the aisle and I'm like hysterical and people are probably like, oh my God, she's so cute. She's so in love. And it's like, no, like I'm shitting my pants right now because like I don't know what to expect. And I don't know how many of y'all have been to a wedding, but when you guys leave when you walk back down the aisle, the families come and like that's like you have like a first moment with like your parents and your in-laws and whatever. That was the first time like I saw them and talked to them. And I remember his mom being like, go hug her, like to her husband, like go hug your daughter-in-law. Like it was just so messed up. And like yes, there was red flags, y'all. I admit I missed some friggin' red flags, big giant red flags, but whatever. I was young, I was in love. And it was comfortable like at that point, right? Like I met him at 17. We'd already been together for 4 years at that point. So like I'm comfortable, like I love this man, whatever. Then we continue our life, like we moved to New York because that's where he got his residency. So I pick up everything, move to New York. I also want to point out I'm supporting him at this point because I have the better job. If you're a resident, you know you get paid peons, like you don't get paid a lot. So I was really supporting him. His family was adamant about not giving him any money because of me. So then things started to kind of like go downhill when we were living in New York in our relationship. And it was stuff like my grandfather had passed away and my poppy was like my life. Like he was someone I adored and he didn't come home with me for the funeral. I can't come. Yes, you can. I know you have days where you can come home. Like I know didn't come. then got mad at me when I was down here sitting Shiva, because in the Jewish tradition, you sit Shiva, so you're not on your phone. People are coming in and out of the house for 7 days and like doing your thing. Got mad I wasn't talking to him 24/7, was tracking my spending, like things like that continuously happen, which is all signs of a narcissistic relationship. And like, but when you're in it and you don't realize it. You don't realize that like these controlling habits are happening, and it's traumatizing once you get out of it and go through it. But that happened. A really close family friend, his parents got in a car accident. This was, and I wanted to go down for that funeral, and he gave me, well, we don't have the money. It's my money. I'm supporting your ass. So like, I'm going to go down for the funeral. Like, don't tell me what I can and can't do. And I think that was kind of like the tipping point. I was sitting at that funeral, and the wife got up and started talking about how much she loved her husband and how special their relationship was. And like, in that moment, I sat there and was like, oh my God, like, I'm not happy. Like, I don't feel this way about my husband. And it was like a reality check to be like, what is going on? Still didn't tell anybody. Nobody knew that I was unhappy. No one. Not my family, not my best friends. No one. I had it all. Flash forward to 2 weeks later, because it's COVID, so I end up staying in Florida because it's my sister-in-law's bachelorette party in Savannah. So I'm like, I'm not going to fly back and forth. Go to the bachelorette party. We're out. We're having fun. I have my ring on. I'm not hiding. I'm married. So I want to point that out. I never cheated on my husband, because I know there's been rumors that I have. I never did. My ring was prevalent. Everybody knew. But a guy came up to me, started talking to me about sports. If you know me, huge sports girly. If I'm at the bar, I'm usually watching something on TV that's sports related. And he just starts talking to me. And then he asked for my number. And I was like, no, like, I'm married. Like, you could see I'm married, whatever. And he goes, but are you happy in your marriage? And I said no. And I wasn't even drunk. But it was like that split reaction where you're like, holy shit. And I remember looking at him and be like, oh my God, I didn't just say that. And I walked away. And I was like, I'm walking away. Like, I'm not doing this. And I like freaked out. Finally, I get home from Savannah and I sit to my parents and I'm like, they're like, okay, it's time to go home. Like, you're so excited to see your husband. You haven't seen him in 3 weeks. And I'm like, I don't want to go. And they were like, what do you mean? And then I just like word vomited everything that had happened to me and like what I was feeling. Like, I was with this, at this point, we had been together for 8 years. And I was like, we haven't been intimate in a year. And I'm still like, I'm 25 at this point. Like, there's no reason why my husband shouldn't want to touch me. Like, I know I may not be like the most attractive person out there, but like, I'm not horrendous where like he doesn't want to touch me. He was tracking everything I was doing with money. He was telling me like, if I gained 15 pounds, he would divorce me, that I couldn't color my hair a certain color. And like, it was just one hit after another. So finally, I'm telling my parents all this, and they're like, well, you need to go home. You need to talk to him about this. So I'm like, you're right. So I go home. Mind you, it's been 3 weeks. 3 freaking weeks, haven't seen my husband. You would think he's excited. Get out of the airport, doesn't even get out of the car to greet me. I have 2 suitcases because I've been gone for 3 weeks and a bag. I have to put it all in the car by myself. So I get in the car and I'm like, okay, we're supposed to go on this vacation in a week. I'm going to get through this vacation. This is going to be my last ditch effort to be like, this is what I'm going to have this conversation with him. We're going to go on this vacation. We're going to have a great time and we're going to fix our marriage. I get home, I get in the shower, and I just break down crying again because I'm like, all these emotions are running through my head. Like, and what sucks was like the biggest emotion that was going through my head was like, his parents are right. Like, I'm going to walk away. And that's what they've been saying and what they've been wanting. And I'm like, and that's terrible that was the first thought, but like that was going through my head. He walks in and while I'm in the shower and he's like, what's wrong? And I'm like, I don't think I could do this anymore. And he was like, what do you mean? I'm like, us. Like, I really don't think I could do this anymore. And the first word that came out of his mouth were, well, what are people going to think about me? Wow. That's what you care about? Of all the things, it's what are people going to think about me? And that's when I knew I was like, this is never going to work. Like, I should be the person you're worried about. Like, you should not be thinking about yourself in that moment. Like, and then he was like, people are going to think I'm gay. Strange thing to say. Very strange thing to say. Not an appropriate conversation to have right now. So I packed up one suitcase. That week, I left. And I left everything else in New York. And I took my valuables and was gone. And that was kind of the end of my marriage of like 8 years of my life gone. And he fought for me for a couple months and like wanted to try to make things work. And we sat with a counselor, and the couples counselor's like, Heather knows what she wants. We never met this lady before, so it wasn't like I like paid her extra money. She was like, Heather knows exactly what she wants in her life. It seems like you're a little confused. So we end up deciding like we're going to stay separated. We file our taxes. Like, and then I thought we were fine. Like, we're cool. Like, we're cordial. We're going through this divorce process. Taxes come about. We get the tax bill. We owe like $8,000. I end up owing $7,000 and he only owes $1,000. And he tells me that I'm stuck with that bill and that he's only going to pay his $1,000 and I'm going to pay my $7,000. And I'm going to be like, call his parents right now and be like, so who was supporting who, bitch? But I would never do that. But like, anyway, so this all happens so I left him October of 2020. So here's the timeline. I leave October 2020, June 2021. My parents are scrolling on Facebook. He removes me off of everything. Officially, we're not divorced, but he has my number blocked. He has my social media blocked. We can only communicate through email, which is insane because, honey, I wasn't calling you up to beg for you back. Like, it was the other way around, but that's besides the point. So the only time we were communicating was about our divorce and like what he needed from me to get that going. June of 2021, Dum Dum makes a post on Facebook saying, happy 1-year anniversary to my girl. And I'm like, that math ain't mathin', because if I left you in October of 2020 and it's now June of 2021 and you're saying happy 1-year anniversary to my girl, you were cheating on me. And that explained a lot. And of course, the family got exactly what they wanted. They got a girl who was a lawyer. Shout out to her for being an attorney. I do feel bad for her because you do it to one person, you're probably going to do it to the next person. And now they're married with a kid, which is like crazy to me. And that was kind of the end of that. And like, I think to this day, when I'm dating, it's really hard when things don't go well, it's hard not to go back to, I'm not good enough. And I hear my stupid in-laws like in my head saying like, she's not good enough. She's not good enough. And like, that's something I have to push through every day. Like, that's 4 years since, and I'm still fighting that demon every day. And it's a lot. Like, to think you're not good enough for someone ever is insane. But what I can say from that relationship, like, I learned how to set boundaries. I learned how to maybe be a bitch. And like, I'm totally okay with being a bitch in a relationship. And not like, oh my God, like I'm an asshole. But like, I'm okay with being a bitch and saying like, these are my boundaries and these are my standards. And if you don't meet them, then that's cool. Like, maybe we just don't belong together. And they're not like crazy boundaries and standards. It's just like, communicate with me, be honest, and respect me. I don't think it's that hard. But for some it is. So it's like stuff like that is what I learned from that relationship. And what I learned was that meet your in-laws way in advance because they can ruin a relationship. But yeah, that's kind of where that was at. So with all that being said, that was a lot. That was deep. But now I have a funny story, so we can like end this on like a funny note. Kind of funny. It's actually pretty sad and pathetic that this is my life, but we're going to get to it. So recently, and this all relates back to like the emotions of this marriage. Recently, I went up to Georgia to do some work, but also visit a close friend of mine who I had dated a couple years ago. We decided that it wasn't going to work out. It was just the wrong timing, but we stayed really close friends. And like, I respected him so much because he has been the only man who I've dated, because I haven't had a boyfriend or anybody officially since my husband, but he's like the first person that like came to my house the first time we ended things and was like, this is why I don't think it's going to work out between us, but like, you're great. And I respected that. He didn't just ghost. It wasn't like a poof, you're gone, disappearing act. So we had this deal where it's like, if we're 35 and we're still single, we're going to get married and have kids together. So I'm like, haha, okay, that's never going to happen. But now it's been 2 years and we still see each other every once in a while. We still talk, we still hang out. And anyway, so I went to see him and it was his birthday. So we go out to dinner, we have a drink, we have fun, whatever. He spends the night at my hotel, whatever. Everything seems fine. So the next day he goes, I'm going to go to breakfast with my mom and then dinner with my dad, hang out with my friends, and I'll come back Sunday night. Cool. We're cool. So flash forward, I don't hear anything from him on Sunday. Like it's like 4 or 5 o'clock and I'm like, well, I'm tired of like sitting in my hotel room. Like I have to do some work in the morning, but like I want to see my friends. So I call my friend up and it gets worse. Like this weekend gets worse. So I call my friend up, like, let's go to Fairway Social. Like it's our place. It was a Dolphins bar. And I had been there all the time when I was living in Georgia. So she was like, okay, yeah, let's go. We go there. We're the only two in the bar. Well, it's more of like a restaurant, but whatever. We're the only two people there. It's kind of awkward. But I was like, you know what? We're here. We might as well just enjoy ourselves. So she begins to ask me about the guy that I had met there over a year ago. And I was like, you don't know the story? She's like, no, tell me the story. And I was like, all right. So I proceeded to tell her this story about this freaking dude who, like, I thought he was very attractive. And, like, mom and dad, this is probably when you should stop listening to this podcast because it's not going to be something you want to hear. But anyway, I thought he was really attractive. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to be in my fuck it era. Because I never had one of those where I'm like, fuck it. Like, I'm just going to do what I want to do. So I write on a piece of paper and I'm like, you're hot if you're single and only if you're single because I'm never going to be that girl. Here's my number. Shoot me a text. He proceeds to shoot me a text and it's like talking to me and he goes, let's get dinner and drinks. And I'm like, okay, bet. The next day we go out, we get dinner and drinks. I find out homeboy's only 23 and he had just turned 23. And I'm like, no, not going to ever date this man. Like you're 23, like just no. And he's like, oh, it's because I'm a bartender. I'm like, no, it's because you're a baby. Like you're a child. So like, it's just never going to work. He's like, okay, well, we could still have fun. And I'm like, you know what? Sure, whatever. Flash forward to like that Thursday. He texts me at like 2 a.m. and he's like, hey, can I come over? I just got off of work. And I was just like, again, fuck it. Like it's my fuck it era. He comes over and he sees my roommate's leash and collar and goes, can we use this? And I'm like, what? He's like, I want you to walk me around the room with this leash and collar. And like, I wish I could say I was making this shit up, but like, it's just too good. Like, you can't. And I'm like, no, like, we're not going to do that. Like, I would be traumatized to walk Harley ever again because of that. So we go in, whatever, and mind you, he's 23. So we all know the 23-year-olds who talk this big game about how great they are in bed and how they're going to last forever and they're going to be like the number one person. And let's just say like these guys, I'm not going to say like the whole thing, but like if you're a man listening to this and even if you're a female, you've probably heard it, but he was a chump. And if you can catch I'll put the number up, but like, yes. So quick, done. Moving on. And he goes, so my smart ass, of course, says, I thought you could last all night. And he goes, well, I can go home. And I said, I didn't ask you to stay. So, because like I like to sleep alone, y'all. I don't like having people, I don't even let my dog sleep with me. But anyway, so he's getting dressed or whatever to leave. And at this point, it's like maybe 3:30 because it was, again, quick situation. And he starts getting a phone call. And I'm like, oh, shit. I was like, oh, shit. It's his girlfriend. Like, I'm fucked. This is his girlfriend. No. It's his fucking mother. It's his mother. And he answers a FaceTime. And he goes, Mom, I'm out. Like, what are you doing? And she goes, where are you? Why are you not home yet? And I'm like, no fucking way is this happening? And he proceeds to tell me he lives in his mom's basement. And I'm like, I really hope that he's actually 23. He was 23, whatever. He was living at home. I don't even care about that. A little strange that your mom's calling you at 23 to ask where you are, but whatever, to each its own. So this all happens. Sunday, I go to the bar to watch the Dolphins game over a year ago. Again, this all happened over a year ago. I go to the Dolphins bar. I see his friend. His friend's like, I know you. And I'm like, oh, no. He's like, yeah, you're too blunt chump girl. And I was like, oh, my God. I was like, he did not just say this in front of all these people at this bar. Like, I'm so embarrassed. And he's like, yeah, he texted us in the group chat. And I'm like, no. He's like, he also said that you are the ugly fat friend. And I'm like, that math doesn't add up either, because how would you would think you would last longer if I was the ugly fat friend, but whatever. More mad that you're talking about me to people. So that later that evening, I see him and I'm like, listen, like, do keep my name out of your mouth. It happened. We happened. It is what it is. I don't care. Moving on. So that was, again, over a year ago. So as I'm telling this story to my friend recently, guess who comes and sits at the bar that day? Frickin' H. He comes in, he sits down, and I'm like, no frickin' way is this happening to me right now. So I'm like, I need a shot. So I tell the bartender, hey, can you get us 2 shots? So he goes over. So like if we're sitting here, he's over here. The bartender goes over to make the drinks in front of H. H goes, I'll make them, don't worry. So I'm thinking, crap, he recognizes me and I'm going to have this conversation with him. No. He comes over, he's making 4 shots, and he's like, I know you from somewhere. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, you've been in here before. I was like, yep, I've been in here before. And so me and my friend are dying because, like, we obviously know who he is. He does not remember who I am, which is like, okay, this is not the best news, but whatever. He making 4 shots, and I'm like, I only asked for 2. And he's like, well, I'm making one for me and the boys. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm only paying for 2. And he goes, no, like, I got it. So I'm like, okay. Take the shot. He goes over. He's leaving. And I'm like, thank God we don't have to hear from him again. He comes back. And he starts trying to talk to us. And I'm just like, oh my God. He goes, I do know you from somewhere. He's like, I really, really do know you. And my friend at this point is like pissed off for me. And she goes, well, I would hope so, considering your beep was in her beep. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, this is not happening. And you know, like when you're at a restaurant or a bar and like there's no one there, the whole staff seems to like congregate to the people who are actually there. So like everybody's hearing this. I'm like beet red. I'm so embarrassed. And he was like, yeah. I remember I texted the group chat after leaving your house and like telling them like how it was so quick and da-da-da. He's like, you have some good ass blank. And I'm like dead. I'm like, I can't have this conversation. I'm embarrassed. Like, I don't want to talk about this anymore. Like, what is going on? And he's like, yeah. And I was kind of a dick to you after. And I was like, okay, like at least he's taking accountability. No, but then it gets worse. He goes, but I'm going to be a dick one more time. And I was like, oh no. And he goes, I'm going to ask for your friend's number because she's hot as fuck. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me, dude? I was like, you got a 1-star review. Do you really think I'm about to recommend you to a friend? Like, I ain't hitting the recommend button. Absolutely not. And then he just keeps going and he continues to be this dick. And me and my friend are like, get away from us. Like, we don't want to talk to you. He just kept going and going and going and like, whatever. So I'm just like dead after this moment. Then flash forward to I get back finally. It's from Georgia to Florida and I'm back. And the guy that I originally went to kind of see when I was in Georgia blocks me on everything, takes me off of all social media. Haven't heard from him, haven't talked to him, haven't done anything. So like, and the sad part was like that weekend was the first time that I had told him my story about my divorce and like what I went through in my marriage, which is a story you all just heard. So he was probably one of the first people that heard the story. And like, it all again goes back to like not feeling good enough for someone ever. And someone that I truly trusted and like believed in as a friend before anything else. Like, yeah, we had the 35 deal, but like I believed in you as a friend and I trusted you as a friend. And I opened up to you about some of the things that I went through in my marriage and my divorce. And like now to not have you reach out to me or talk to me at all hurts and is sad. And I think that's why I really, wrapping this all up, like wanted to do this podcast, because I want to be able to tell people like you're gonna be okay and like you're gonna go through some shit in life and you're gonna learn some really, really hard lessons and you're gonna make mistakes, but it's all about the people you surround yourself with who actually support you and lift you up. And if they're not there lifting you up and supporting you, like let them go. It is okay to have a small support group. You don't need 20,000 friends. If you have a handful of really true supportive friends who lift you up and guide you and help you. That's all you need. And that's kind of what we're going to build here. Like, this is going to be a community where we can just lean on each other and learn and grow and talk about the shitty situations we've been through in life when it comes to relationships, even if it's friendships, relationships, anything. And it's not just for the girlies. Like, men, come out, share your story. Because, like, I know girls can be assholes too. Like, I get it. Like, I was an asshole to some guys that I dated. So, like, I get it. But yeah, that's kind of like my story and like where we're at. And I'm so excited to have guests on. So if you have a story or you have that what the fuck moment in your life where you're like, hey, I need to get this story out finally, please let us know. Send us a DM and we will be so excited to have you on the show. We are located in Palm Beach, Florida. So come if you're local and share your story, but you can also like just call in and we can just chat about it. So I'm Heather again with Shout Out to the Exes, and we're so excited to see y'all next week.